This episode of Generally Famous contains some strong language. It also discusses drug and alcohol addiction, depression, and suicide. If you or anyone you know needs help with their mental health, a range of organisations are available. They include the 1737 service, which offers free access to a trained counsellor, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just call or text 1737.
Generally Famous, proudly brought to you by Oppo's first flip phone, the Find N2 Flip. Generally famous for looking great and folding small to fit anywhere. Kia ora Aotearoa and welcome to Generally Famous, a Stuff podcast. I'm Simon Bridges, and every week I talk to a generally famous but always interesting guest about life, love and what makes them tick. Today's guest is a famous stand-up comedian, a near constant TV and radio personality on our screens and wireless for decades now, mental health champion, and in his inimitable words, a quote, recovering arsehole. Yep. Mike King, welcome.
Thank you, Simon. Wow, every time people mention comedy, it seems like such a long time ago. And when people say, I remember seeing you at such and such a venue, my first thing I'm sorry.
Why?
I'm really
Why sorry?
Because I was a different person back then. My style of comedy was anti-PC.
Yeah.
I was, my audience was middle-class New Zealand tradies.
Yeah.
And I thought everyone was like me, and they believed that, political correctness was just more woke bullshit. And
yes.
Woke wasn't even a word back then, and it was shoved down our throat. I was anti-Sue Bradford. I was anti anything to do with institutional change, because political correctness was institutional change. It was all driven from the top, and we have to be that. And I just rallied against it. And it wasn't. And I thought everyone thought like me, and I thought anyone who didn't think like me was the opposition. You're either with me or you're against me, and I would rail against everyone. And it wasn't until I gave up drugs and alcohol in 2007, around the same time that the Pigs campaign came out. I was then the spokesman for New Zealand Pork. A friend of mine came along to one of my shows, and, I'd been openly talking about my depression on the Nutters Club radio show. And he said to me, quote, pigs get depression too, don't you, Mike? And I went, are you serious, dude? And he's a well-researched guy, right? And he said, yeah, and this was in Invercargill. So then I went up on stage in front of 400 people, and I just maliciously ripped him a new ass. I just gave it to him. Anyway, the next day he said, do you mind if I send you some stuff? And he did. So he sent me a whole lot of research around pigs and how close to humans they really are. And then he sent me a video of a pig farm. And I was like, wow, this is pretty ordinary. So one thing you get when you give up drugs and alcohol is you get this little thing called a conscience. So he really pricked my conscience. So I went to New Zealand Pork and I said, hey, how about we look at this? I want to see this farm. And they were like, oh, Mike, this is just the radicals. Well, I go, yeah, it might be. It's not like that. Yeah, it might be. But, I want to go and have a look. And they said, sure, we'll get you in. 4 or 5 months go by. They still haven't done it. So I ring them up again and said, hey, are we going to go and have a look at this? Oh, yes, Mike, yes, it's on the list. And I knew then that it wasn't going to happen. So I rang up my mate and said, who are these people? And maybe they can take me. And then they took me in. So I saw what I saw. And then I understood that what I was selling was animal misery. Now, I was never against the farmers, the people, the pork growers. I was up for changing the legislation around crate farming. After that, I got to meet a different range of people, a wider range of people. And, these were greenies and, people who cared about animal welfare.
The ones you normally make fun of or did make at that point in time.
And, they were really skeptical of me. Obviously, they thought, what's the angle this guy's working? And then afterwards, after all that happens, so I get dismissed from the pork board. And they said, Mike King's just having revenge.
Which would have been really lucrative.
Yeah. Mike King's having revenge against this organisation that got them. And I said to the press at the time, Marcus Lashaw, everyone was having a go at me, I will show you the email trail that this was going on way before. No one was interested in that. Obviously, it was just Mike King's disgruntled because he lost his job. So anyway, I meet all of these people and I suddenly realised that they're just ordinary people. They've got their views and,
And it's okay to disagree.
It's okay to disagree.
Tribes aren't necessarily in that regard helpful for us.
But there was more of them than I thought.
Yeah.
So when you're living, everyone's got their group of friends who agree with them, right? So you think everyone thinks like that. Times that by a couple of 100,000. Yes. And now I just firmly, and so it really opened my eyes to how diverse New Zealand was.
So,
and is.
Do you you eat pork now?
Yes. 100%. I
have
no
issue.
But it
has to be ethical.
No, it doesn't. If you put it in front of me, Simon, I'll eat it. I'm the Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
I will eat it and I enjoy it, right? What I'm saying to people is I am pro-choice. Yep. Here is how this meat is being grown. There is this choice and there is that choice. I only buy ethical. But if I'm going to a family function and they've got it there, I'm not going to throw it in their face. I'm not going to preach to them.
Yeah.
Long as you know that you have a choice. So I'm always been freedom of choice.
And tell me this, you used the word woke. I mean, you were anti-woke. Are you woke now?
Well, I would probably be described by the anti-woke movement as a turncoat, and so I care about gender diversity. I care about other people. I care about including trans people, gay people in our society, and that's not so. People misinterpret that. So you're pushing for this. No. I have my own opinions on people's lifestyle, and I will hold those. My push is acceptance of self. So if you're a trans person, accept yourself. That's who you are. And acceptance of others' choices. And I liken that to, I have a friend, I'm a rugby player and he wants to play netball. Now the old man would have gone, puffed, what do you want to put on a skirt? Is that what you're going to do, pal? Now I'm of the opinion that if you want to play netball, you play netball.
Yeah.
But get all the information. Don't just run out onto the court. Find out about the game, find out what you like about that. And I accept the fact that it is your choice to be a netballer, and I will still love you like a brother because you play netball.
You're sounding very enlightened, actually, Mike.
Well, I'm trying. I'm 61 years old. I've spent my whole life a black and white thinker, not realising, not understanding that the world lives in grey. So I thought if you couldn't make a choice, you're a fence sitter and, you were just waiting to see which way the crowd's going. Counselling helped me to understand that being a black and white thinker, I was constantly painting myself into a corner.
That said, look, I suppose you can't change your personality. I was going to come to this much later in our chat, but you are, and I don't mean this as a criticism, I like it, right? And I've got some of this too.
Yep.
You've got aggression. You've got passion,
passion,
and you've still got that, right?
Always.
You're coming in here with, you're coming all guns blazing, right?
Always.
You haven't sort of sat down like you've just had a durry and you're sort of relaxing into this kind of chat, and it's very, so.
This is my personality, so I don't test the water with a toe. I jump in.
Do you regret that? I mean, what?
No,
you got regrets?
Yeah, of course. Everyone's got regrets.
You got regrets in your comedy, because I was going to come to this as well.
I've got regrets in every aspect of my life.
Because you did a good line of, the sort of, in quotes, anti-Maori stuff that only a Māori can do so well. I mean, you regret any of that?
No, I don't. And that anti-Māori thing came from white people who wanted to believe that I was on their team. But there was also a section of society.
And maybe an acceptable Maori.
Yeah, of course I would see that bloody,
Mike King says that.
bloody Mike King, So, I'm not anti-Maori, Mike, but they're doing, not you though, Mike, not you. You're one of the good ones. You see, you had the same thing as me. And look, you made yourself. You're on TV now. You got no education. Why can't all the rest be like you?
Get an honest job in comedy.
Yeah, look at you. You've made something of yourself. And, I always had a rule. I always had a rule in comedy, and there was a line that I would never cross. So there was one particular sketch I remember down in the Viaduct Basin where we were shooting something in a waka and a whole lot of Māori would come up, and it was clearly derogatory towards Māori. And they were saying, "You got to do it." I said, "I'm not doing it." But this is early in my TV career, really early. Look,
before it was fashionable to be like that.
Well, no, before I was famous, so they were using that.
So it was a big risk.
Yeah, it was a huge risk. And they said, "Listen, mate, you signed up, and this is a joke. That's all it is." And I went, "Here's my line: when this is all over, I have to go and live with my people. And I'm going to walk in on that pipe. I walk towards that marae with my head up. I'm not going to be cowering." So I'm staunchly Māori, and...
Well, I was going to ask you that, but again, much later, I was going to talk some comedy stuff, but let's go there. What does being Māori mean to you?
So being Māori to me is and it has different contexts for different people. So, for example, I've been in mental health now for 10 years. The people with the poorest showing are the Māori organisations. The only thing that is improving in Māori mental health is the cars they're driving. They are, and these people look at me and they say to me, "You're hanging out with your white friends. You're a spud. You're brown on the outside. You're white on the inside." And I say back to them, "I'm more Māori than you are. I'm not doing, I don't have my hand out to the government. I'm not kissing their ass and taking their money. I'm doing it the proper way, which is we have an idea about how we can improve things. We don't put our hand out. We just get in there and do the job." So
I suppose the thing I'm always interested, there's, at one level, you can't argue with it. You're Māori, you're Ngāti Porou, I've got that right?
No, so I'm Te Mahurihuri, which is we're in the Ngāpuhi region, yes. But we're kind of like Ratana. Yeah. So we're out there on our own. So we're from the Hokianga.
So that's whakapapa. Can't argue with that. And then there's, do you feel it? Is it sort of you do?
Well, yeah, but then in saying that, I know for a fact that, I'm too brown for white people and I'm not brown enough for my own people. I go onto marae.
This is my world.
Yeah, I go onto marae. People know I don't kōrero Māori, particularly, old kuia, and they will come up and speak to me exclusively in Māori to humiliate me.
Yes.
I understand that. I understand. People say, "Why don't you? Why don't you learn?" Why? Because it's not my purpose right now. There are plenty of others. There are young people keeping the language alive. I'm a servant to young people in this country, and I'm in the business of societal attitudinal change. And, I will do everything in my power to give our kids a better life than I have.
And what they need to understand, it seems to me, is it doesn't make you less Māori. Right, that you can't on the pie speak te reo fluently and do a great job.
I can do enough to get a feed.
It'd be great. Yeah. Me too. I consider. I've got about a minute. Yeah, right? Don't get me past the minute. But have you always on the comedy? Have you always been funny?
So I'll flow onto that from the. So Te Mahurihuri marae in Point Chev, and Premier Ave in Point Chev was built by my grandfather. So we whakapapa back to Waimā and Hokianga. But a lot of our people were down in Porirua, and part of Te Rauparaha's mob, and they used to, when someone dies, journey up. Well, back in the 60s and the early 70s, the cars were crap, and it was roads weren't great, so it was a long drive. So my granddad and his brother decided that they'd build this marae. So we were always around the marae. We were always, so I know my whakapapa, just because I don't speak te reo, I know my whakapapa, and that was the thing. So on the marae, what's the number one thing outside tangi? Humour. It was always there, And as a kid growing up, I was one of those kids that never felt like I was good enough. Other kids were better than me. I was brash and loud on the outside and confident on the outside. If there was a roof to jump off, I'm jumping first, And my dad used to think I was a show-off. Stop showing off. So I wasn't doing it to show off. I was doing it to prove myself. I had this, and I needed to be world champion at something. So I always felt like I was less than everyone else. Other kids were better than me. They were faster, stronger, academically more gifted. So from a very young age, I was looking for something I could be world champion in. And sports was the obvious thing. But as soon as I found out that I was only going to be average, even better than average, it wasn't good enough. I needed to be world class. So I was trying to find myself. So I was a great starter of projects, and I was a fast quitter. Which really pissed my dad off.
Aren't most of us.
Yeah, but see, my dad's thing was, once you start something, mate, you see it right through to the end. You don't quit. You got to keep going.
What did he do for a crust?
So he was... my dad was a travelling salesman. He was a good-looking bastard. So
and a funny sort of, what he's saying, there was more than sales going on. Or
yeah.
In a funny sort of way, that's a good kind of, like lineage for whakapapa for comedy, isn't it? That fast talking, you got to get in the door, make sure they buy some toothpaste,
so keep
them engaged.
With his customers, he was great. With his family,
charming,
nothing.
Yeah.
Like he was stoic. He was do everything to the utmost. Like our lawns.
Of course, this is a common Kiwi story, though, right?
Our lawns were immaculate. Everything was immaculate. Nothing, So our lawns were just perfection. 2 inches, 1 inch down. Every edge was just, So he was that guy.
So not trying to sort of do too much pop psychology, but let me have a go. Hearing what you've said, your comedy is linked to your desire for attention, and look, in terms of Dad, that sort of plays into it as well, right? Because he was that sort of guy, and so you're trying to find a way to
He was the giant shadow. He was the giant shadow. Like, I worship my dad. He could play any musical instrument, and if he couldn't play it, he would learn to play it in 24 hours, saxophone, trumpet, whatever, guitar. I remember he brought home a set of saxophones, a set of bagpipes, the hardest instrument in the world to play. The next day, every cat in the neighbourhood wanted to sleep with those bagpipes. He was phenomenal. He's a great single-figure handicap golfer, great sportsman, just did everything great. And I just wanted my dad to be proud of me. So I'd start all of these projects, and then one day I was at school and a mate told a joke. And the bullies, and no one...
What sort of age we talking?
8.
Yep.
The bullies saw this and they took it as an opportunity to harass my mate, to tell the joke again so they could laugh at him, not with him. And as soon as he finished the joke and they got in, I got up and I told exactly the same joke. Exactly the same. Only this time, everybody laughed. It was the greatest feeling in my life because I automatically took people laughing with people liking me. And I just, because when you don't like yourself, you're getting your validation from other people. So that was the day one of my comedy career, but it was day one of my downfall because that was the day that I started to get my self-esteem from the approval of other people. So I was a people pleaser from that day forward.
And in a sense, you're addicted to it. But,
it's what I need.
And you are, I mean, I'm right, you're an addictive personality?
Yep, 100%. And I have all the traits of addictive personalities. Like I'm a black and white thinker. I'm a perfectionist. Everything has to be perfect. I could do the greatest show on earth and everyone comes up to me. All I remember is the 3 jokes I fucked up. That's all I remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember any. I remember all the bad bits. I remember the one man not laughing. I remember all of these things that I could have, should have, probably said, but didn't, So, that's what drives me.
Casting forward, I mean, I think many people will know your first sort of stand-up story. You're there at, where was it?
Kitty O'Brien's.
And your car gets stolen and so on. But
Ben Elton walks in, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, and he gives you a bit of a claim and you're on your sort of way. I mean, take us sort of back to that time. What were you doing immediately prior? Were you chefing?
Yeah, I was a chef. I was pissing the whole country off. I was working on the inter-island ferries.
So you weren't a good chef then? No, whoops, right? We better not say that.
I didn't. I was magnificent,
right?
But I never cooked for the punters. I cooked for the crew,
right?
And I was a trade union rep. So I was very staunch about trade union rights, and if we want mallow puffs, then we will hold these ferries up till we get the mallow puffs, So I was staunch, and then I broke my leg playing. No, I'll back up. I never told this story before. So I'm in there. And I'm funny, I know I'm funny, right? And I'm in there, I'm always entertaining the crews. And back in those days, there was 60, 70 people in the crew. So there was always a big audience. And my mate, Max Wilby, who was my assistant, I was a chief cook, he was the assistant. And he came to me one day and says, "Man, you're really funny. Have you ever thought about being a stand-up comedian?" I was like, "No, I wouldn't even know how to go about it." He goes, "Right, every time you tell a story, I want you to write down what you said. Every time you hear a funny line, every time you tell a punchline, write it all down. And then when you decide to be a comedian and you have a story and you don't have a punchline, go back to the book and the book will give you the punchline." So what I did from there was I started writing everything down. Right? I started writing everything down. I've still got those books from Max told me. So then I broke my leg playing rugby, and while I was recuperating, I went to Kitty O'Brien's, and that story, I go down to Kitty O'Brien's, I watch comedy for 6 weeks. I secretly film the comedians out of my bag. Yeah. So I've got one of those huge VHS video cameras, and I'm sitting there.
Sort of wait, I've got to change the tape over.
Yeah, but you can't tell people you're filming, right? So I film all of this thing, and I go home and I study. In my garage, I set all the kids' toys up in the garage. I've got a hairbrush as a microphone, and I practice my set. Then I go into the club and I smash it. Now, the point of this story is Max Wilby is the guy that got me into this. He was the guy. How he convinced me to get into it is another story. So he then proceeded to tell me the story. I don't know what decade it was in. It might have been the 70s, it might even be the 60s. He says, I was working in transport, and he said, I had a mate of mine who used to repair fridges in Christchurch. So he used to repair these fridges, and people would throw them away, and he'd take them to his workshop, and he'd repair them, and then he would sell them, or he would replace the people's fridges, and he would sell them. And I said to the guy one day, why don't you set up a shop where you're, doing fridges and become a retailer in fridges? And the guy went, wow, that's a good idea. I might look at that. And Max kept on encouraging him. That guy was Noel Leeming.
Wow.
So
Noel Leeming, Mike King.
Bam.
If only he'd talked to me about politics.
There you go. He probably would have talked you into being a stuffed podcaster instead of a politician.
Exactly, and who knows where I could have been now. So you're doing the stand-up. That's going incredibly well. We sort of, I know what the answer to this is going to be, but you're there, you're getting the audience laughing, and you've got their approval and admiration. I mean, were you living for that?
Yeah, I was. But I was a perfectionist. So, I had a manager before my first gig. I knew that
this was what was going to happen.
I'm going to slay this. I just knew that this was it. So I go in. So what I used to do is I used to write my sets out. So, and there'll just be one line title, it could be dog, school story, da-da-da. And then I would say to my manager, I want titter, laugh, belly laugh, applause. So 1 tick, 2 ticks, 3 ticks, 4. So what he would do, I said, as I'm telling these jokes, I want you to mark them. And then I would come off the stage straight after and I would mark. And what I discovered was I would always underscore. I would always underscore. So what he put down as a 4, I'd put down as a 2. So I knew I was my own harshest critic. So then I would find, so he'd write, a lot of 4s and a few 3s. But if there was a 2, I would work on that part of the act and make that a 4. So the idea being make the weakest bit the strongest bit and the strongest bit the weakest bit. So I was always turning over material all the time.
And you, I presume, are more of a Billy Connolly than a Chris Rock. What I mean by that is Billy seemed to me someone who'd riff and go here and there and, probably got a rough sense of it, but there'd be a fair bit of impromptu. I went to Chris Rock. I sort of thought with that one it was kind of a bit too scripted.
So Chris in these later years has turned into politics. A lot of that, what you saw, was American politics.
Yes.
But it's old American politics. Who cares about Donald Trump, bro? Chris Rock at his peak was black and white people, black people, white people, how they, and that was something that we could all relate to. That was at his peak. I just feel like he's been, even
the money and the celebrity.
Well, there's only so much material you have, before people understand your style. It's not like a singer who can go on for there's very few that can go on for decades and decades and decades.
We need to get to mental health. I want to talk to you about that in a bit of detail. But look, you were a massive success. You went on TV. You were doing pop comedy, Comedy Central.
That no one knows.
Everything.
I was depressed through all of that.
Yes.
Through the whole thing. So I started the first time I got drunk was 13 years old. And drinking alcohol. So I've always had this voice of self-doubt, this inner critic that's constantly telling me that I'm shit. So I could never be by myself. I preferred being with big groups of people. I had to be with people all the time. My biggest fear was being in a room with me and myself. So, and the first time I got drunk, so most people have an inner critic, right? We all have an inner critic. But most people's inner critic is normal. My inner critic's like a crying newborn baby with colic, screaming hateful messages 24/7. And what I discovered was getting wasted was like going into the lounge and escaping myself. I could still hear the baby crying in the background, but it wasn't right here. It wasn't on top of me. So it was a form of escape. The only problem was a buzz only lasts for 5 or 6 hours. Then I've got to go back into the room. The baby's screaming louder and I've got a headache. So the only thing that I could do to escape that was to get drunk again, get wasted again.
Well, look, were you drunk or high on stage?
Never.
It didn't extend to
never.
that?
No, it's called the relentless pursuit of temporary happiness. So when I was on stage, I was working. Yes. So I would never get high.
And you were a professional.
Never get high after 2:00 in the afternoon. So, I would be clean, sober, right through. People would see me with the Heineken on stage, but I don't even drink the neck. I didn't guzzle it down like Ricky Gervais. I just sipped that. And I use it for comic timing. If I'm telling you a story and a blah, 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 and I reach for it, and then halfway up I go, oh, this must be important because he stopped. So everything is about timing. Everything's about stage. I used to practice my shit so well that it looked like I was making it up as I was going along. Also, anyone can write a joke. It's not about the jokes. It's the links. How do I link this story? Billy Connolly's classic example. So, I'm driving in my Volvo with the family. And another thing about the Volvo, it was made in Germany. But in Germany, they had copperstone roads. And the stone, so you're going on this, and then 45 minutes, so we're in the Volvo. And all of a sudden you go, how the hell did he do
too
that?
good.
So it's the linking of the stories that counts. And it's how you
Actually,
link
just on that, who's all-time, who's your favourite comedian, other than yourself?
Richard Pryor.
Right.
Richard was the first comedian I heard who told stories about himself. Everyone else is telling stories about other people, about observations, about mistakes other people. Rich was being vulnerable and talking about his cocaine addictions, about shooting up the street with his handgun, and it was For me, it was mercurial. Eddie Murphy did it as well with
Today. I mean, are you an active follower of what's going on the scene today? Not so much.
Not particularly. It's like it's another era.
Yeah.
I still appreciate good comedy, but when you know the recipe, it's. Does Eric Clapton watch other guitarists? Sure, if he gets invited along, he'll watch and he'll enjoy. But I don't think he just goes on TV and watches other guitarists. It just,
And just on the comedy years, I mean, you've been really frank. You're a cocaine addict.
Yep.
You were an alcohol addict. You were an attention addict. All of that's going on through these years. You're doing stand-up. You're on TV. You're a household name.
That's right.
And I mean, I want to get a
Game
sense
of
of
two
it.
halves. Don't even get me started on that shit.
Right.
I mean, the stuff that I did on that show was people would be shocked. It's just, before the show, that was. So this was at the end of.
Were you a bad person?
I was never a bad person. So I wasn't, like. What do you define bad?
I suppose what I mean is, were you filled with that? Actually, it's the wrong question. Were you filled with self-loathing at that period of time?
Yeah, I was always filled with self-loathing. I never talked myself up. I always tried to bring the next generation of comics through. Truthfully, me and Andy Clay, we started the stand-up comedy movement in New Zealand. We started it. And I take great pride in saying that. There were others before us, Willie DeWitt, Jeremy Corbett. They were doing university capping review comedy. It was like, I'm this and up here for thinking. They were always in character. Me and Andy talked about our lives growing up. Andy used to talk about living with his grandmother at Southland Village and sneaking through the back door and couldn't let into the other residents. And I would talk about, my marriage and talk about my kids and all of these types of things. So we started the movement. By the time I got to 2007, I knew my comedy was dead. There was a new wave of comics coming through but all the way up to 2007, I always championed other comedians. I always grabbed other comedians. So I did the first sketch show. It was called At Least You're Having a Go. And I had Di Henwood, Paul Ego, Jan-Marie Franzovic. I had all of these up-and-coming comics who were appearing as characters on stage. So I always had 3 sets. I had a set over here, so then the comics would come out and do this, the cameras would zoom in, and they'd be in a house. And as soon as that one comes out, they'd pull out, Paul Ego would be singing a song in the middle, while the other, and then we position, and so we get this wide view, and then bam, we're in the moment. And I used these other comics. Why? Because I knew comedy, you can't be town can't live on one band alone. So the idea was to build up everything, build up the whole movement so more people could come along. But through that time, I would always look at the failures. I could have done that better.
And I hear that, but I don't want to caricature it. I presume there were great highs. There were amazing times where you were on top of the world. There were parts of it that were a great life. I mean, is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
What you've also said to me is, you knew, 6, 7, your comedy was dead. I mean, I don't want to be flippant here, but were you dead? And what I mean by that is you'd had several near-death experiences.
Yeah,
you were
really
on a
big ones up
course.
there. Not big ones up to then. So I had my first stroke in 2007.
Right.
And January 13th, 2007, while I was playing in the Aussie Millions poker tournament, a $10,500 tournament, and I'm there. Phil Ivy's there, all these legends of the game are there, and I rate myself. I rated myself, but I had the stroke before the game started. But I knew up to then that I had a drug and alcohol problem. I knew I had to give up. So I had the stroke in 2007. So I decided I'd come out of that. I want to change my life. I'm gonna get off everything. Unbeknownst to anyone else, I left I left Melbourne and I flew home. And this is how fickle things are. As I'm driving home, I'm not supposed to be driving, but, I'm Māori, I don't listen to doctors. So I'm driving home in my Ford Ranger, because Ford were my sponsor, and phone rings. Hello. Oh, is that you, Mike? Yeah. Oh, I thought I was going to get the voice message. I said, oh, yeah, so, who are you? Oh, so-and-so from Ford. Okay, yeah, what can I do for you? This is really awkward. We want our car back. We want to end the sponsorship. And I was like, okay, all right. I just had a near fatal thing. Okay. So, and I got home. When I got home, I vowed I was never going to touch drugs again. But I had an ounce of rock solid cocaine in my dresser at home, and the first thing I did when I got home is I started chopping up, and I snorted that, and I just started crying. I was just like, wow, you couldn't. So I was beating myself up. Moved forward to end of March. I had my own travel company called Travel King. I can tell you what sort of company it was. Our logo was a Playboy bunny smoking a cigar. So so we were doing white middle class business tours. So you'd have your big tourist companies out there, and they'd be picked up in a bus, and they'd all be dressed up in their Gulliver's travel gear, and I'd have limousines at the airport waiting for my crew. What people don't realise, limousines are actually cheaper than buses, so everyone would look at us enviously. But you know what we'd get up to. So I'd given up drugs and alcohol before I went to Hong Kong for 2 weeks. It felt like 6 months, and in my head, I'd given up for 6 months. So anyway, when you get to Hong Kong, it is all just huge buckets of alcohol. I had a dealer up there. I used to do shows for him up there, and he would supply me with all my coke. So I've made it. I'm not going to go and do that. I'm going to stay on the course. And I was down in Wan Chai, which is the big party place, and I dropped everyone off at the game, and then I faked forgetting something at the hotel so I didn't have to be around the alcohol, and I shot in, and I didn't know what to do. So I was in Wan Chai, and I'm just wandering down the street. Māori boy comes fast. Mikey, how you going, brother? I said, I'm good, Cass, I'm good. Oh, we should have beer, bro. And I'm like, nah, bro, I've given up. And he said, you've given up in New Zealand, bro. And instantly my inner critic went, yeah, let's go. And I'd given up drinking, smoking, went straight in there, got a beer, first person, give us a cigarette, bam, 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 straight onto my dealer. He goes, like, where have you been? I've been waiting for you to call, bring it to my hotel. So 2 days later, I've got half an ounce of coke at the hotel, and I just started snorting this coke in the hotel and getting angrier and angrier and angrier. And at my lack of ability to stay the course.
I'm incredibly excited to be opening my brand spanking new, never looked at before Oppo Find N2 Flip. It's got some beautiful paper it's wrapped in, all very sustainable. I'm unwrapping it. It tells me I've got inspiration ahead, and I believe it. I can tell already it's highly portable. That fold technology, flexion hinge, is amazing. The smoothness of that fold, it's going to fit into the smallest of places. I also know from my little research on this, great battery, great 44 watt super fast charging in fact. So that means all in all, fashion, portable, get me through my day faster. Check them out online at oppo.com/nz. When is it amongst all of this that you effectively diagnose and say, and come out, I suppose, a way of saying that you have depression and big mental health problems? I knew that before.
So I'm in Melbourne. I am deeply, deeply depressed. I don't know I'm depressed. I think anyone who's depressed is weak. So I'm not depressed, and my depression manifested itself in anger. So I'm in a shop, and there's nothing happening. I walk in, I find myself there, and I go, oh, shit, you're here now, you got to buy something. So I grabbed a newspaper and I grabbed a can of Coke, and I went back to my hotel, and I'm lying on my bed and I'm reading. And now, if you know Melbourne, everything's AFL. And there was a 7-page story on one of the greatest AFL players currently playing going through his depression. I went, soft cock, what a dick. But it was just pages of it. And then it got to a page where he says, these were my symptoms. And I just went through it and went, that's me, that's me, that's me. That's me, that's me. And it was this light bulb moment. And I remember ringing my wife at the time and going, wow, I've got something to share. So I'm going to another function when I get back, and I got Marty Devlin, my wife and his wife, in a limousine meeting me at the airport. I jump in the airport and I went, guess what? I've got depression. And it was like, this power. But then, like all men, once I had the answer to my problem, I left it. I've got depression. I just need to drink more. I just need to do more drugs. There was no way in hell I was going to go and see a counsellor at that stage. And then so in 2007, April 1st, 2007, I decided to give up drugs. Now, I have the suicide attempt. I tried to OD in that hotel room in Hong Kong. I was so upset with my weakness, I snorted let's call it 10 grams of coke, enough to kill a horse. And I passed out. And while I'm lying on the floor, my then 9-year-old daughter came and sat on my chest, and she was going, Dad, what are you doing? Now, I deliberately intended to take my own life, but I didn't want to make it look like a suicide. I wanted to go out like a hero, rock and roll, Mike King, OD'd, hotel room, big story back home, yeah, props for all of that shit. That's my ego, right? So, she's there. She's saying, what are you doing? You need to come home. And when I came to, I woke up. I rang the airport straight away. I booked a flight back to New Zealand. I fell out of the plane on April 1st, 2007, and decided that's it. But what I did then was I locked myself in my house. I didn't trust myself to go anywhere. 3-4 weeks later, my wife's worried about me. She rings Willie Jackson. I said, I'm really worried about Mike. He's not working. He's not doing anything. Just leave me the fuck alone. Everyone just back off. I just need to get through this on my own. No, I'm not going to go to anywhere. I'm not going to go to AA or NA and be addicted to the God of my choice. I'm going to do this on my own. And Willie rang me up and said, look, you got to get out. You got to go and start working. You got to meet people. I said, screw you. He goes, Martin Crump has a late night show on Radio Live from 8 to 12 for the week. And you come in and do his show. I don't want to do that stupid thing. He goes, too late. I've already put you in. Go in and do the show. So I went in, did the show, discovered that at 8 o'clock at night, everyone is topics are done for the day, so I go through, hey, making here, like this happened today, the interest rates went up, if that's affecting you, give us a call, 0800 723 465, 0800 Radio Live. And I'd go through all these, no one was calling. Oh, I've got plenty of people on the line, let's go to a break. And then nothing, ring, nothing's ringing. So the, voices are going, come back, hey, da-da-da, there's a piece of paper lying down the road. If you have paper to give us a call, 0800 723 465. I was just making stories up. There's a plane crash. If you've ever been involved in a plane crash, give us a call, 0800 723 465, 0800 Radio. Turns out not many people survive plane crashes, so I didn't get in. So anyway, I'm on, it's 25 past 10. And I go, let's go to a break. And my producer goes, there's no more breaks. So I'm sitting there with 35 minutes of airtime to fill and no calls. So I close my eyes and I sit there and go, and one voice is going, just start swearing, bro. Just start swearing. Oh, don't be silly. The voice of don't be silly. Just tell people the truth. Swear, tell the truth. Swear, tell the truth. And then I just opened my eyes and went, ladies and gentlemen, I have been lying to you for the last 25 minutes. There is no one on the line, and if you don't call in the next 10 seconds, I'm going to start talking to the voices in my head. Then I closed my eyes and went, the reason no one's calling, bro, is because everyone hates you. Oh, they don't hate you. They're probably having dinner. Having dinner, it's 10 o'clock at night. No one eats dinner at 10 o'clock. They hate you. Listen, Michael, why do you always talk to Michael? Why do you call him Michael? His name's Mike. Why the heck? And the stream of unconscious thought came out of my mouth. And then my producer went, you better take the calls. And the call button was just lit up. Pushed down the first corner. First caller's name was Rangi. Māori fella, I knew that because his name was Rangi. And I said, so how are you, Rangi? Welcome to the show. He goes, bro, I have those voices too. And it was like the first moment where I understood that other people were going. So me and Rangi had a great conversation. His voice is my voice, all 7 of us. We just had this yarn. And then other people recognized themselves in our story. And then I even had a 9-year-old girl. She'd been going through a whole lot of problems. She couldn't sleep at night. Her mother was with her, and she rang me up and started talking. And she's like, this is the first time I've ever felt normal. I thought it was just me. So the next night I came in and said, we can talk about all these subjects, or we can talk about what we talked about last night. Bam, instantly. By Friday, we were the Nutters Club, and that's where the Nutters Club was born. So that was my journey into mental health, by being vulnerable and talking about myself. And I had a few people, abusing me, go, you're soft. And I go, I'm soft, am I? The radio station's on Ponsonby Road. I get off at 12. We're right next to the fire station. Can't miss me. I'll catch you outside,
We can have a chat about. And today, the Nutters Club, Gumboot Friday, Key to Life Charitable Trust. Don't be modest. What have they achieved?
Well, the game changer for me was in 2012. I got picked up for driving my Harley Davidson without a license, and a beautiful district court judge gave me 200 hours of
your
community
Wikipedia
service.
told me this.
Yeah. So as I am doing this, wondering what I'm going to do with my 200 hours, a principal from Taipa Area School who used to come down to Auckland weekends, used to listen to me going home on the Sunday. He rang me up and said, we've just lost 9 kids up here. Can you come up and talk to my kids? And I got up there. I was going to go and tell them jokes. Seriously, I was just going to go and tell them jokes. Go, cheer up, kids. You're hurting other people. When I got there, I understood that jokes weren't going to be appropriate. So I just shared for the first time my story and my battles with my inner critic. And the kids went from, here's another jerk from Auckland telling us what we're doing wrong, to suddenly they're going, holy crap. And they were able to recognize themselves in my story. So after the talk, one of the teachers came up and said, we've got 5 kids on suicide watch. Can you go and talk to them? They want to talk to you. They recognize their lives in your story. And I was like, hell yeah, I've never talked to suicidal kids before. Walked in there expecting to see a bunch of crying kids. So we're just normal kids. I went, how you going? Yeah, good. Oh, apparently you fellas want to kill yourself. Yep. Well, might want to tell your face because you don't look like you want to die. So I said to the first guy, what's your issues? And he said, da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. And these were really, really big things. So automatically I'm going, wow, did you talk to your parents? And he said, no. Why not? Because every time I talk to my parents about anything, they make it about them and they make me feel worse. And I said, give me some examples. I've got 5 kids. Give me some examples. He went, da-da-da, 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 da-da-da. And I'm like, holy shit, that's me. I do all of those things. So in that moment, I did what every parent would do, every adult. I went to the next kid. I said, what about you? Māori boy, good-looking fella. I said, so what about you? He goes, first off, I'm gay. So I'm like, okay, that must be tough. Yeah, gangland Northland, it must be hard wrestling with your sexuality. He goes, I'm sweet with being gay. I said, oh, okay, so what's the problem? He goes, every time I hear the word faggot, homo, gay boy, poofter, I think even from my friends who are just joking, I think, so this is how the world sees me. They see me as this, and what's the point? Now, that went right through my heart. Why? Because at the time, not only was I saying that on stage, on radio and on television, I was actively encouraging people to say that as a joke. And that was the first time in my life I realized my words kill. My words kill. And I talked to the other kids, and just as they'd recognize themselves in my story, I recognized myself as a parent and an adult in their story. And it was that aha moment where I went, holy shit, I'm the problem. My generation is the problem. So I spent the next 13 years on the road listening to young people about what their problems are. And guess what? It is so far removed from what our academics and clinicians are teaching people. Like, I hate the fact that academics and clinicians have made alcohol and drugs part of the mental health problem. I'm a drug addict and alcoholic. I can tell you this for a fact. everyone used to think that drugs and alcohol were my problem. To ordinary people, excessive drinking, drugs and alcohol is a problem. For every drug addict and alcoholic in the country, it is the solution to my problem. It shuts my inner critic up. And your solution of taking away my medicine, I would rather die than be without it. So instead of taking my medicine off, I see it as the solution. So instead of taking it off me, why don't you come up with an alternative before you decide to rip this off?
And what are those alternatives?
Well, it's different things for different people, and that's what the Nutters Club's all about. We don't have a single solution. See, with mental health in New Zealand, we find the solution that suits 80% of the population, but it's the 20% of the population that create 80% of the problems, the old 20-80 rule, right? So they're feeling excluded. So all these evangelists who just go, it's this, it's this, it's this. So it could be counselling, it can be church. We've got to look outside the box for all of these things.
There's, 98,000 things I want to talk to you about. We're running out of time. I've got 3 quick fires in a sense, and I shouldn't say that glibly because they're all big topics, right? Yep. But let's stick with mental health on 3 things. Where are we at today on this as opposed to sort of the early 2000s or the mid-2000s?
We're exactly where we were in the early 2000s. We're sitting there pretending that we're getting it right, but we keep funding the same people who are making the same mistakes. They are so focused on keeping their organisation and the Ministry of Health safe, they are putting our kids' lives at risk. If I'd taken to them my idea of Gumboot Friday, which is much better than anything they've got, it still wouldn't be off the ground today. So rather than sitting around and moping about it, we take action. I've been cornered by everyone in high power calls from Wellington about what we did in Napier, which is bringing counsellors in there, privately paid counsellors, which we paid for, the New Zealand public paid for. We need to work together. You can't just come in here. We were going to go and do the same. Well, you haven't. And when you do, we'll step aside. And when you're gone 2 weeks later, we'll step back in. So we are nowhere near where we should be. The wrong people are in the job. So there's 3 parts to this. You've got academics, you've got clinicians, and you've got the people. The academics and the clinicians are a happily married people, and the public are the wayward child. Shut up, listen, get back into your bedroom. We know what we're doing. So those 3 have to come together.
Next one, it's a taboo word, but you talk about it a fair bit. There's 2 schools here. We should talk more about the S word, suicide, because the problem's so bad, and those who say we shouldn't because the problem's so bad.
So the problem with suppression is this, and there's a classic example. So down in the Hutt Valley, I think it was 2 years ago, a young student took their life. It hit the school straight away. The school alerted all the kids, right? They alerted them all and sent them all home. Then CUSA came in and reiterated, you can't talk about it, you can't talk about it. We're worried about contagion, you can't talk about it. So and you can understand why they are thinking this, because, talking about it could create this escalation. People think it's attention, whatever. So they came back to that school the next day and no one spoke a word. But I was in touch with students from that school. I'd spoken there before. And from their perspective, so from our perspective, we're keeping you safe. From the kids' perspective, it was, our friend died yesterday and you have wiped them off the map. They didn't even exist to you. There is how do you wipe someone off the map? You don't care about us. So I'm big on let's talk about it, but let's not talk about means. We don't have to talk about how they did it, but we must talk about why someone feels this way. Now, I did a study, the best study of suicide in this country ever. And the study had participants who were the experts in suicide. You know who they were? people who died by suicide. So I asked the New Zealand public to send me letters from people who had taken their own life. We got over 300 letters came in. Of those 300, we had just under 100 letters that had enough content to look at the themes. And what we were doing is we were looking for themes, commonalities, so we could better inform future interventions. And here's what we learned. The first thing we learned was that the majority of people who took their own lives had long-term existing problems. And we're not talking weeks and months. We're talking, in some cases, years and decades of problems, even if their death came as a surprise to their loved ones. We are masters of wearing the mask. 2, they couldn't get the help, or the help wasn't appropriate to them, so they gave up. The third thing we learned is the majority of the participants didn't want to die. They just wanted their pain to end. I can't live with this anymore. I don't want to die. And the last one, the majority of participants knew that they were loved and they loved back. They loved back. But for them, that love was an extra burden. I am screwing up your life. Now, the thing about this, these scenarios, it goes counter to what our suicide industry is built on. Our suicide industry in this country is built on impulsivity. It's a get out of jail free card. So when the numbers come down like they did last year, well, we'll all pat ourselves on the back and we're here. Sure, we could do better, but we're heading in the right direction. When the numbers come up, well, there's not much you can do if someone really wants to take their own life. On the day the report came out, which was World Suicide Prevention Day 2020, they released their target 0 suicides and refused to even acknowledge the report was there.
Thank you for that. What is your message to a young, old, doesn't matter what kind of New Zealander who's struggling with all of these things right now?
I don't have any message for people who's struggling. I think that's patronising. My message to people out there who are not struggling, remembering 40% of young people who have suicidal thoughts before they leave school after a major crisis, 80% of those kids never reach out and ask for help because they're worried about what other people think, say, or do. And our message to them is reach out and ask for help. It's like, I've just told you I'm scared of sharks, and your solution, hey, go swim with a shark and a dolphin might come along. My message to everyone out there is, what are we all doing to make it okay for young people, old people, everybody to reach out and ask for help? And the honest truth is we're not doing enough. I need people to take off their masks of invincibility and start talking about what is going wrong with them. By not talking, by being stoic, it's having a devastating effect on our kids' lives, because they're looking at all this perfection. Parents who, when I come home, tell them about 5 things happened my day, 4 amazing, 1 bad, just focusing on the one. What do you mean you failed that maths test, Simon? I told you on Thursday. Oh no, you had other ideas, didn't you?
Have you been sitting at our dinner table?
Yeah, but this is what happens, and this is not our fault, right? This is what we were taught. You can only teach what you were taught. So we need to be more vulnerable. And a classic example of what a kid thinks. If you come home, your kid recognizes you're having a bad day. How's your day, Dad? I had a shit day, mate. Had a terrible day. Don't want to talk about it. Go to the fridge, get me a beer. I'll be on the couch. Now your child is walking to the fridge and they will make it about them. What the hell did you do, Dad? Dad's always upset around you. You must have been that maths result that you got back. God, you're such a disappointment to your dad. A simple change. How was your day, Dad? I had a crap day today. The boss bawled me out. I went and bawled out another worker over something that was my fault. I feel terrible, but come here, mate. Thank you for recognizing that I'm struggling. That means the world to me. Now go to the fridge, get me a beer, I'll be on the couch. And your child's going to be going to the fridge going, yes, I am the solution to the problem. Our kids need to see themselves in us. They need to see confusion. They need to see uncertainty. They need to see vulnerability, and they are not seeing it. And I tell you this, and I mean this sincerely from my heart. I would hate to be your child, Simon. Why? Because you are a successful brown man, right? You have made something of your life. You are generally famous. But your kids are looking at you right now going, I'm never going to live up to that. How can I be like, I want to be like my dad, but those goals are so far away. So your kids need to feel and hear the struggle. And timing's everything. The only time you'll ever talk about struggle with your kids, Dad, my girlfriend, don't worry, son, happens to everybody. Oh, let Dad tell you a story about what happened to him. So what you think you're saying to your child is, this is a universal shared experience, son.
Yes.
We all go through it. Let me tell you your story. What your son is hearing, so whenever I talk about me, you make it about you, and you got through it, so you're Captain Perfect. I can't talk to you about anything. The second thing I want people to stop doing is saying in front of their children and with their friends, look, I'm having trouble with my youngest one, but I just want him to be happy. I just want you to be happy, son. That's all I want. So what you're saying is, I love you and I want everything. I'll do everything I can to make you happy. You know what your kid's hearing? I can only talk to you when I'm happy, because if I'm not happy, I'm disappointing you. And it's that disappointment that fuels the inner critic. How we speak to our children becomes their inner voice.
You've got an inner critic. You've told us about that you've been, as you say, hugely vulnerable and self-critical and aware, and we thank you for that. You said a really interesting thing, I think at the end of 2022, and that was basically, I'm going to be dead by 70 because of all the drugs and booze I've done. Do you really believe that?
Yeah, I'm not scared of death. I'm just a realist.
You've seen Keith Richards? He's like 80.
I know, but I know what I've put myself through. And when people say to me, you need to take care of yourself. Listen, mate, you need to take care of yourself. What, are you going to step up? Are you going to step up to the plate? They're not stepping up. So I've had my life of fun, you know, and this is really hard on my family. It's really hard on my wife. But we've had a frank and open discussion, and I said, baby, the bus ain't slowing down. So you either get on the bus and enjoy the ride or jump off the bus.
What's the bus got in store over the next decade?
So I put kids first. At the moment, I'm working on a program with MIT of getting counsellors into every school. I think it's achievable. Where our goal right now is to change counselling from being seen as a crisis situation, a crisis intervention, to it's just a conversation. And so we started in high schools asking young people to change their worldview on counselling and take a risk and try counselling. We are now in primary schools from year 2 through to year 6, shaping their worldview, which is a counsellor is like a bike mechanic. When you go along, you have sovereignty over your mental health, you have sovereignty over your bike. The counsellor or the bike mechanic will tell you what's wrong with your bike, give you the options. You decide where you go with that. It is your bike. He's going to say that wheel's going to eventually break and it's going to cause wear and tear here, here, and here, or I can change it now, but it's your decision. So we need to have these honest conversations with our kids because they know. I'm sick of people. You know, we've got 6-year-olds out there who are suicidal, and I'm listening to all these dickhead experts who are saying kids don't know what death is. They don't know it's final. You're living in la-la land, mate. Seriously. These kids know more than you will ever know. And if you take that mask off and make yourself vulnerable and start sharing stories with you, they will take their masks off and they will invite you into a world that you never knew existed.
We're going to end this the way we end everyone. That's with general knowledge. Let me just ask you this, though.
How much is a bottle of milk? $5.24.
Wow, cost of living crisis. You've seen and met some of the great Māori comedians. You know, we think Billy T, Prince Tui
Billy
Teka.
T when I was in my apprenticeship.
What is it that defines and makes Māori humour and entertainment so good?
Self-deprecation. and real life stories. I used to sit there with Billy back in the 70s. He'd be our headline act when I was an apprentice chef. I would cook him dinner. He would have a well-done sirloin steak, chips, coleslaw, 2 eggs, and half a loaf of buttered fresh bread.
Beautiful.
And he would tell stories about Tui Teka and all these wonderful stories, which later came on to be in his television show.
Do you think they'd be cancelled now?
Who, Billy? No, he was different. He didn't swear. There was nothing there.
And there was no malice there?
There was never any malice. There's no way in heck he'd be cancelled.
What do you think about that cancel culture stuff? Was it? Are you say actually about time we needed to kind of correct or overcorrect, or load of nonsense, or something in between?
I'm a great believer in cancel behaviour, not cancel culture. Cancelling culture and cancelling opinion. For example, if you brought up gender as a homophobe. It's designed by the 1% to shut down conversation and put up their view. I don't believe in that. I believe everyone's entitled to their opinion, and none of this, but if it hurts someone, walk away. You don't have to listen. As long as we're not inciting violence, as long as we're not, everyone talks about Jordan Peterson. I listen to him all the time. I find him, and the other guy, I don't agree with their points, but I love how they articulate, and they make me think. People's opinions should make you think. So if you're cancelling a culture, you're cancelling my ability to have all the knowledge and think.
Totally agree with that. What's the best night out you've ever had?
Well, I've had not like the best night for me, seriously, is watching Aussie MasterChef on the couch with my wife.
Fantastic.
There's just, that's our together time. That's our go-to. We pick a chef that's our favourite, and then we just riddle the other one.
Well, and you're an expert, so you can critique them.
Well, so's my wife. She's a restaurant owner as well. So,
fantastic.
And I think she's better than me at it. So, but we just, that's my favourite night out is just sharing the couch with my wife.
If you could be any animal, what would it be and why?
Oh, well, I'm a lion, I guess. That's
you are a bloody lion.
Yeah, that's who I am.
Or a tiger.
Yeah, I don't walk backwards.
Go tiger.
Yeah, I don't walk backwards. I walk to trouble. I've been to Afghanistan 5 times. I was over in East Timor twice. I loved the action over there. We got bombed at Bagram Air Base, and I loved every second of it. I was in the Christchurch earthquake. Everything slowed down for me as the buildings were coming down. It was just like, I walked towards danger. I think maybe I might have a death wish or something, but
If you're trapped in a lift, who'd you most like to be trapped with?
My dad.
He's gone now?
Yeah, my dad, if I could just spend another 10 minutes with him, because I misunderstood my dad, I thought my dad wasn't a great dad, and, he never told me he loved me till I was 45 years old, and it wasn't until him and I went to the hospital together and he was diagnosed with terminal cancer that I really got to know him and really found out how much he cared. And, he didn't have a dad. He didn't know how to be a dad. His dad ran away. So, from a purely personal reflection with dad, from a purely ego, or just self-satisfaction, I'd love to spend some time in the lift with Muhammad Ali. I loved Muhammad. He was a warrior of the people, grossly misunderstood by people, who made Muslim faith acceptable, made it digestible. So
I identify particularly with what you're saying about your dad, Mike. Look, you've been funny, thought-provoking, and bloody real, actually. So we really appreciate that.
You're really good at this. Has anyone told you that?
Oh, shucks, man. We're both Generally Famous. There you go. You've been listening to Generally Famous, a Stuff podcast. There's a new episode every Wednesday. You can listen to them all at stuff.co.nz/generallyfamous or wherever you get your podcasts. In fact, if you follow us on Apple or Spotify, any of the podcast apps, in fact, you'll get the latest episode automatically. Sounds good, right? Thanks to my producers, Chris Reed and Jen Black, and audio editor, Connor Scott. I'm Simon Bridges. I really appreciate you listening. Generally Famous was proudly brought to you by Oppo's first flip phone, the Find N2 Flip. Generally famous for looking great and folding small to fit anywhere.
The Oppo Find N2 Flip looks strikingly flawless. No bumps, no interruptions, no compromises. Creating the perfect flat screen folding phone wasn't easy, and at Oppo we challenged ourselves constantly. Can we make it lighter, more durable, more usable but with a battery that can last all day? Like a flagship smartphone with an innovative foldable experience. The answer to everything had to be yes. The Oppo Find N2 Flip smartphone. For a sneak preview, go to oppo.com/NZ.
If you or anyone you know needs help with their mental health, a range of organisations are available. They include the 1737 service, which offers free access to a trained counsellor, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just call or text 1737.